when we hold this session two, I had a lot of thoughts, and I was considering who should be the panelist. And then I just invited the best panelists, best of the best panelists. And I would like each of them to introduce themselves. And I call him Appo Sensei all the time. Why you are called Appo Sensei in the first place? This is my name, Rodriguez Abdurrahman. I'm an associate professor, and this is in the Arabic language. My name is shortened Ab. So
my true name is Abdurrahman, and I mean, but it is alleviated down to Ab. So what is your main topic of your research at the moment? Well, I deal in various topics. Basically, my field, meta theory. At the moment, for example, brain science, and then language relations is the topic. Besides, the war theory and then national theory, Middle East. So, broadly, I'm working on the research as long as my time allows. So, language and the society, overall field is my interest. Thank you. Next, Professor Minamimori. My name is Shigeta Minamimori. I belong to the Department of the Economy. My expertise is the history of Japanese economy. And another topic is the Japan economy, history of Japanese economical thoughts. So era is Edo era, and then early Meiji era. So 19th century economy is my interest. So Mr. Takahira Kanda, so I am researching him. So I belong to the Department of the Economy, but I'm not a researcher of economics. I shouldn't say this. However, I don't like economics very much, honestly speaking. But I'm interested in the economy thinking and economy history. Thank you.
So, Sunny Sensei, please. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sari from the environmental science. My research field is three. I have three research fields. I'm specialized in the economics and also environmental economics, like climate change policy or the energy transition occurs, or how we can quantify the impact of the economy. And so I'm measuring it with the GDP, as the Firma Sensei mentioned, and this policy is shared. What would be the most affected the management of the corporations and enterprises, and how the decision is made in the enterprises. So there is a lot of greedy companies think the decision is made on the greedily. So I'm researching into that. Recently, with the support of Nagasaki University, the mangrove and the forests, how much CO2 can be absorbed in the forests, and the capability of the forests are now quantified. So today, I think it can contribute to the measurement of the common goods, as mentioned today. Thank you. These are the members of the panel discussion. First of all, Mr. Apple, could you please give some comments after hearing his presentation?
I'm delighted that we have you here today. I would like to thank you and as well as those who have organized this event, especially Kawa-sensei, of course, for this opportunity. Many thanks also for your stimulating and inspiring presentation. There's no doubt that a mode of social production that places the common good at its core is not only simply a very good, excellent thing, but possibly the solution to all the fundamental problems facing the people of modern societies and the modern world. That the principle of personal gain or profit maximization and the prevalent modes of thinking, speaking, and acting driven by feud and greed should lose their dominance over human society and thus also over the entire globe and its inhabitants, and give way to values such as cooperation, solidarity, and human dignity is truly a panacea against all those unspeakable evils of which so-called human civilization is de facto composed. This is also the reason why the idea of economy for the common good can be found from antiquity to the present day in different versions, in various philosophical, political, religious, economic, etc. systems and movements, as you also repeatedly point out in your works. In your books, for example, in today's presentation also, we find multiple references to Aristotle and his differentiation between oikonomia and chrematistica. You mentioned the concept of bonum commune by Thomas Aquinas in your books. You also name a series of contemporary thinkers and scientists. Many others come to mind in this context, such as Cicero with his Res Publica, Jean-Jacques Rousseau with his Volonté Générale, which should serve the well-being of the community. And by the way, Rousseau, we find Rousseau again and again in your works also, as well. Of course, Marx should not be forgotten either. You deal with him in several places in your text for obvious reasons. Marx's critique of capitalism was also a critique of alienation and the disregard for common good in favor of capital accumulation. Among other things, you refer also to the Ubuntu principle from Southern Africa and the indigenous concept of buen vivir from South America. In this respect, one could also think of Gandhi's Sarvodaya, meaning prosperity for all model, which is an ethical model for the economy and society. Maybe the Confucian dictum of ethical behavior for harmonious coexistence. I could also include the maslaha concept of Islamic law. There are numerous other concepts or social production and organization models whose core idea is that economic activities should not be geared towards individual profit, but towards the well-being of the community and harmony with the environment. In other words, I confirm and reaffirm that the idea of an economy for common good is a universal constant. The real question is undoubtedly how this idea should be realized and implemented in practice. This is precisely where opinions differ, and it is precisely in connection with this question that I would like to formulate my questions to you. I'll shorten it because we have time problem. I would like to ask you a few interrelated questions in this context. How realistic is your program? Is it feasible? More specifically, how do you intend to cultivate the sovereign citizen, considering the statistical historical fact that human species seems to tend to use its differential endowment, namely its ability to think and speak, almost exclusively for the purpose of destroying life on Earth? I wonder how this metamorphosis is to take place. And third, your path envisages reforming global trade in such a way that ethical values are prioritized. Question: given the deeply entrenched structures of World Trade Organization and existing trade agreements, how realistic is it to integrate ECG, Economy for Common Good principles, into global trade policies without significant resistance from powerful corporate and state actors? These are my questions. Thank
あり
you.
がとうございます。アポ先生のから質問をいただいてますので、質問は最後にまとめて、
Thank you,
フェル
Professor
バーさんも交えて
Apple.
皆さんでちょっとどう考えるかという議論を
So
させていただ
in
けれ
the
ばと思い
end,
ます。
we would like to have a discussion.
質問を受けてますよね。
So please keep this question in mind. We want to have a discussion afterwards altogether.
じゃあ南村先生お願いします。
Now, Professor Minamimori.
はい、使用言語は関西弁ですけ
So
れども、
I
はい
speak the Kansai dialect,
今日のお話です
not
が、この前
Japanese.
集的
Okay,
でした。
so his
私
talk was very
日本経済
inspiring
史という
and
ですね、講義
exciting.
をですね、担当している
I'm in
んですけれ
charge
ど
of
も、
the giving a lecture on the Japanese economic history, and until last year, the deflation occurred in the second half of the 19th century, and there is a formation of the low the salary workers, and then the low price products were produced, and then the competitive strength is really strengthened, and Japan becomes exporters to the world. But the low wage workers are kind of the advocated. And I started to question this, therefore, so I'm just asking this question if this is right concept or interpretation of what happened in the 19th century. But anyway, so I have two questions to you, Professor Felber. And the first question is that, as you mentioned, the Homo economics, or the it's about the Homo economics. The Adam Smith has a theory of the national wealth. This is the first book in the economy. And he mentioned the invisible hand in the part of the book. And people pursue safety and the profit on its own, on their own. So this is people, humans pursuing its own profit as a nature of humans. However, Smith says that he understood, but he had another aspect of the human being as well. So there is he also wrote the book in the 1959 that's called the ethical economy, and he says the selfishness is only part of the aspect of the human nature, and human nature is that they try to get the empathy from others. That is another aspect of the human nature. He also said so. And later, in the second half of the 19th century or 1800s, the modern economics emerged as a school of study, and so the humans who can maximize their utilities are kind of defined. So this is the maximization of the utility. The person pursues that. They try to explain the economic situation mathematically, and this model is a kind of only the icon, and this is only kind of imaginary, and it was forgotten. And then the human economic, the purpose of the human economy is being misunderstood as only the pursuit of the profit, because this idea was introduced because we wanted to explain the economic model statistically or mathematically, but it was kind of misunderstood by the public, and then the economy is now misunderstood as a means to pursue the profit only. So that is I believe that is the question I want to pose to you. What do you think about this idea? And the second question is you have this common good matrix. You showed the common good matrix. Looking at that, there is a village community that evoked me about the community village in the Edo period or feudal period. So there was a certain cursed system in Japan, and the human dignity was not respected so much, but the solidarity or the transparency and the democratic decisions were practiced in the community and between communities to maintain the good relationship within the community and between the communities. And also the ecological sustainability is also respected because they wanted to have a perpetual community survival for the years and generations to come in the Edo feudal period. However, people have a lot of different values, as you said, but there is a value to pursue the profit only. Sometimes this face is shown, and then some people just try to pursue the profits only. That is also a risk. And in the Edo period, there was the rule level, the bushi or the samurai tried to restrain the excess economic activities. In the 19th century, if they were not to cut so much trees, and there was Okayama, the person in Okayama, that we should develop more the rice paddy fields to produce more rices. But it will have the negative impact in the ecology, and that has to be constrained. That was proposed in those era. So considering all these, the advocacy or the call for the protection of the nature, I think regulation have a kind of negative notion or the perception, but the human has the nature of pursuing the profit, but only partially. I think so in order to realize the common good economy, I think the certain level of the restraints or the regulation might step in to regulate the greediness or the pursuing the people. So maybe it could lead to the answer to the Apple Sensei's question. So.
Thank you so much. Probably my question might be the part that the professor couldn't talk about until the end. So Adam Smith was mentioned, old economist. So economics has a history of 200 years plus, and the society has changed, and then it improved or new theory came up. And now there is an overlap with what the professor said, but economically was created, and economics started 100 years. And I want to talk about Marshall. This economist brought up with new theory that is to not only to make the nation rich, but that is to enhance the common good for the society. So environment economy also was incorporated. So in this lecture, as a speaker, I have this opportunity, and I read the professor's books, and then I listened to their insights. So there is this multiple crisis. So when we look at the current economy, this is very important to have the multiple perspective, and I received a lot of insight. So Marshall's theory. So with that, what is different from the existing economics is that previously, if it is efficiency was focused, but now the equity should be the focus. So, for example, air, nature, clean ocean, so that belongs to nobody, but everybody can use. So if we use too many of those resources, would lead to the tragedy. So there is this concept. So probably the common good could lead to common tragedy. So I listened to the presentation while thinking about that. And I have a question. So in this way of using the resources, what's most important is that it could lead to the consumers. However, the businesses, the corporate's responsibilities is important to achieve SDGs, and there is the global target by 2030, 2050. So asset, technology, and also the corporate responsibilities to move the market plays a greater role. And these days, the business is pursuing the profit like 1950s. Now their attitude is changing. So ESG and then corporate societies are more of their focus. More holistic, comprehensive business operation is now happening. So this leads to the 3 wins of the Japanese traditional way of thinking. So businesses and consumers and the societies, so all 3 parties win. So this concept is very important now. However, from the academic perspective, at the background of this thinking, there is greenwashing and rainbow washing. So while you are doing something good, however, the impact is less. So people are criticizing this aspect. So the proposal and the index and then social common good, so these new ideas are actually carried out or executed by certain businesses. But what is the motivation? And I mean, if you show us some successful, good examples, that will be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. So in total, there are 5 questions, and all are interrelated.
You get all 5 questions?
True. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Great. And maybe you can use this one.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Thank you. Yes, yes, they are all interrelated, like everything. Yeah. Thanks very much for your comments, for your appreciative comments, and for your meaningful questions. I think I can interweave them to a certain degree. And I start with the long-term perspective. I thank for the confirmation that the common good is nothing new at all. It's a universal value found in all cultures. I have found this confirmed with other anthropologists. It has different names, of course, but especially in the European culture, it's the constant bottom line. When we today talk about bottom line, everybody thinks about money, but it has the bottom line in Europe from Aristotle up to Adam Smith was the common good. This is a literal quote of a philosopher, historian, that looked into every stage of history between the two, and it's a period of 2 millennia. It's a period of 2 millennia, and the bottom line in economic thinking, which was integrated first in philosophical thinking and then in ethics, the bottom line was the common good. So confirmation on that. Adam Smith is abused as the advocate of egoism with this invisible hand. In his 800 pages book, The Wealth of Nations, how many times does he call upon the invisible hand? Once. And it's not really relevant. And the theory of moral sentiments has only 600 pages, but it was written before The Wealth of Nations. And whereas in The Wealth of Nations, he tells us that it's not the benevolence of the butcher, the baker, and the brewer that we expect our daily meal, which is a metaphor for the common good. In the theory of moral sentiments, he has a whole chapter on universal benevolence. This was like a Gandhian thought. Universal benevolence, a whole chapter, and he elaborated lines and lines and pages. So Adam Smith was concretely abused by Paul Samuelson. Paul Samuelson, in the 200 years later, Paul Samuelson made famous the invisible hand, and he twisted its meaning towards the legitimation of egoism. And Paul Samuelson is actually considered a new Keynesian economist, but Adam Smith was a classical economist. And the shift, the turn of the tide, actually this turn of the tide in the history of economics was neoclassical economics in the second half of the 19th century. And they kicked out politics, they kicked out ethics, they kicked out everything that is not purely financial, calculable, and mathematical investigable. And this is the most extreme mutilation of economic science that could have occurred. And now it's about re-embedding and reconciliating this neoclassical mutilated economic, merely financial science with everything else in which had been embedded all the time, from ecology to gender, from psychology to happiness research and deep sustainability. Your second point, which is just a keyword.
That was his second point. This is human nature. Whether human nature is destructive. So whether we can achieve the goal.
Okay, thanks. Humans are extremely agile, so we can kill each other, and we can love each other and be extremely tender with one another. And have the softest feelings that a sentient being can have. So we have a choice. And two things are important, that the cultural rules favor and promote our virtues and not our vices. So we are taught at school and at home and in the media that we rather should behave in a helpful manner, in a polite manner, in a nice manner. And more importantly, the rules of the game, of the economy, should follow the same logic, which means the rules of the game of the economy should not reward and enhance the egoistic, the greedy, the insatiable, the irresponsible, and the unsustainable, but those who live the virtues. Yeah? We don't have to change human nature at all. Human nature will be always the same. We will always, in an economy for the common good, in a Gandhian economy, or in a cooperative or sustainable economy, we will always have the possibility to be greedy and speedy and violent. But as long as it's not rewarded, it's not a problem. But the teaching and the rules of the game, the incentives, they have to put into advantage, into relative and competitive advantage, those who do good. That's the most important learning from an economy. And in this case, it has never existed, because those common good economies in indigenous communities, in non-market economies, in monasteries, in households, in public services, this was never ever an international market economy. So the next step would be to transfer these experiences that have existed everywhere into an international market economy.
Sorry, your answer, I think, is related to Dr. Minamimori's question, the second question, whether because in the Edo era, there was a kind of ECG community there, but sometimes people forget about the common good and they try to pursue profit. And then there is a government, and they gave a kind of ruling so that people avoid to pursue profit. So his question is that, what do you think about this kind of regulations or rules from above?
The answer is the same as to the commons topic that the other colleague raised, because the famous tragedy of the commons is not dealing with commons, because a common in the meaning that a piece of land or a fish ground or a wood is managed by a collective of humans or a community. What is described in the famous essay, The Tragedy of the Commons, is an unpossessed land which belongs to no one. So it's not an example for anything. And that's why Elinor Ostrom, the first woman who was awarded with that prize that we mix up with the Nobel Prize for Economics, which does not exist. But Elinor Ostrom, it's the Swedish Riksbank's prize. It's not a Nobel Prize. That's very important for me. I could explain it, and I have written on it in books. But Elinor Ostrom explained that if you make good rules, commons work perfectly. They work better than markets. But it depends on the rules. And you have to define the rules. You have to define who is the owner of the commons. And you have to sanction those who break the rules. Yeah, that's what she said. That's because not everybody behaves non-violently, voluntarily. That's the point. Intrinsic motivation is always better than extrinsic motivation, but not everybody is intrinsically motivated in order that we are already in a stage of development that we can renounce of extrinsic motivation. And same answer here. So the rules should not eliminate profit making, but the rules should be in a way that profit is only a means at the service of the actual goals, of the contribution to the common good. And this is exactly doing that. No? If you try to maximize your profit, you will go bankrupt. But if you put the profit at the service of the community, your company will survive. It's a question of intelligent design, but not of evolution, but of the economy. And now I remember this last question, which is maybe for me the most important one. Although we know, we're full of wisdom, we know everything, and people do know in every culture, we know everything. We just don't know how to implement it. And my answer to that is let the people decide. Let the people decide, and they will probably not always provide the best solutions, but as for ecology, as for peace, and as for the games of the rule of the economy, they will at least provide a less bad solution than their governments. This show empirical examples with direct democracy. Not in all cases, but in most of cases, if the people are involved in decision-making processes, they take better decisions. And I give you one last example, which I also had not the...
Yes,
I have it on the slides, yeah. But my slides are not on the
スライ
screen.
ドを使いたいのですけれども、はい、先ほどと同じスライドでお願いします。
The pointer is not... So I'm,
Okay, now it's working.
yeah, but
Okay,
can
then
you...
I can move.
4 sheets below, yes, and one more, and one more, and one more, and one more. Yes,
One more.
thanks.
This
No,
No, the next one.
the next one, yes. So this is, let's say, the twin sister of the economy for the common good. As for the process, this is answering directly your question, because if governments decide, maybe they will go to war forever, and they will destroy the planet until the last tree. That's the experience. This is not necessarily like that, but the probability is much higher than if you let the people decide. Maybe the next slide, and give the people some sovereign rights. These are fundamental collective rights for people, and we have empirical evidence for protection of the environment and the climate, for peace. People would never go to war. They would never ask their governments, please, let's go to war. It's always the governments that pull their people into wars. And now comes my example. I'm talking too quickly. Please, one more.
One more, sorry.
And if people are asked how much should top managers earn as a maximum in relation to the minimum, and they have several possibilities. So not one proposal. One proposal might be 10 to 1. But then a second is 20 to 1. And the third is 50 to 1. And the fifth is 3 to 1. And again, with an intelligent method. It's an intelligent decision-making method. It's not about the content. It's about the process. Please, one more. Then what people so far, I have done this exercise in 30 countries. And in 30 countries, the winning proposal is either factor 10 or maximum factor 20. And this curve is the curve of resistance. It means that there is strong resistance against total equality or socialism, and there is strong and high resistance against high inequality, means capitalism. And the lowest resistance, the bottom of the valley of resistance, is in most countries between factor 10 and 20 or even 5. And please, the last slide now, one later. Yes. On the left extreme, this is what people would decide. It's not on. On the left column is what people would decide in most countries, 1 to 10. And the other columns is what the governments are deciding, because this is the state of affairs in many countries. I know that in Japan it was lower most of the time. I have read that in Toyota, top managers only earned like 20 times of the average income. But now what I see, and this, my final message, this I see as a global risk. That Japanese economy is taking over capitalistic values from American corporate capitalism. And this is really a global risk. If this model, profit maximization, pursuit of financial goals, is becoming the mainstream teaching in economics, then we will destroy the society and the planet. So the opportunity is an economy that is connecting back to the cultural roots of each country, to the traditional values of each country, and to the involvement of the people who, there will always be some greedy. That's not the problem. There's always 1% of psychopaths in each society. They are not the problem. But if you involve all the people, you have 99% non-psychopathic people and rather respectful and non-violent and solidary people. And if you involve them in the intelligent design of the rule making, then you will have a sound and healthy economy that is part of the solution and not any longer part of the problem.
Thank you. How about the question from Ms. Sok? About the role of a company and whether there are kind of examples of success.
Yes, the slide.
Yes, right. I know.
Maybe I come here. That's easier.
Yeah.
Well, in all countries, like in all yes, in all countries, there are specific sectors like cooperatives or solidary farming or indigenous communities or monasteries or newly sustainable companies that by intrinsic motivation opt for corporate social responsibility or social businesses, Muhammad Yunus in Bangladesh. So it exists everywhere. The only thing is they have not become mainstream anywhere. So they are at the fringe, they are at the periphery. And if they are excellent, if they are very good, they are successful, although the system design is contrary to them. Although the system is favoring the sharks and the greedy corporations, they still survive, and they survive in all branches, and they do organic agriculture. You know that Sikkim was the first state of India which decided to go for 100% organic agriculture, which was the first example of mainstreaming of organic agriculture.
And the question is, I think, what were the incentives? Why these companies introduced ECG?
I have even a slide for that. No, I'm not. I don't have it with me. The companies have very diverse reasons why they do it. First, it's philosophy and spiritual orientation and the pursuit of meaning. In English, we distinguish the profit seekers from the sense seekers. And some, not everybody, but some, go for meaning and go for for ethical values. This is fulfilling for them, otherwise they could not do differently. Then we have the extrinsic motivation factors, which means they find new clients, which is happening because clients with a different level of awareness and consciousness go look for these companies and buy with these companies. Employees, most importantly employees, especially of the next generation, search for these ethical companies and want to work only in these companies. And even ethical banks go to these companies and offer them cheaper finance, cheaper loans and credit. This is already happening in these first examples, so this is already a reality. And in the future, what will, the examples go on until Uruguay already, and in the future, they will have the first mover advantage. So when sustainability reporting becomes binding, then they already know what to do. And we are there. The European Union has already passed its Sustainability Reporting Directive. It's a law which obliges big companies to make this CSR and these sustainability reports mandatorily. And China has just in this year developed the Chinese standards of sustainability reporting. So we're moving towards a world where there will be the international financial reporting standards, which exist in all countries for stock market companies. And one day there will be sustainability reporting standards on a mandatory level. And this is another huge opportunity because you can make this law very badly and make a huge bureaucratic monster out of it, and nobody likes it. This is the case of the European Union. Or you can make it very smartly, slim, and practical. And this is a huge opportunity for countries who not just copy what the European Union has created, but make a better instrument. And this is another pragmatic opportunity for Japan.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. So I think we still have 10 more minutes. すみません、日本語でした。すみません。あと10分ほど時間がありますので。
So we still have 10 minutes left. So if you have any further questions, please raise your hand. If you have any questions, please raise your hand.
いかがでしょうか。
Any question?
せっかくですので、
So
皆さん、アッポ先生の今のお話。
Appo sensei, first of all,
4人の先生たちにこれコメントを
I would like to ask the 4 panelists to give us some comments. And so is there anyone who wants to volunteer first? So then I would like to ask one by one. Appo-san, sensei, please give us the feedback. I'll give you 2 minutes each. So last comment from each one.
Okay, it seems that in the distant and not so distant past, there were societies in quite a few regions of the world that were diametrically opposed to our modern society in that they were based on the principle of the common good. One of the extremely rare works dealing with these historical cases is the book, The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber and David Wengrow. From it, we read that the indigenous societies of America had a social order, a mode of governance and production that must be called participatory and direct democracy. The social life in those societies took place in and on absolute freedom of sovereign individuals and on a social equality that spontaneously emanated from the former. I share the opinion of Graeber and Wengrow. I also think that there have been and still are human social formations and social modes of living and producing on the fringes of what is called civilization. But as far as the mainstream of human civilization, overall course of human civilization history is concerned, it's extremely difficult to think or say anything positive and optimistic about the dominating social modes of organization and production of the human species on Earth. Just my question, we know that the fate of those societies mentioned by Graeber and Wengrow, those social formations which were shaped and functioned on the basis of an understanding of freedom and equality that people in modern capitalist societies could not even comprehend, were declared savages by the civilized West and destroyed without exception. And we have still today, at least 3 I know, similar social projects, experiments. My question would be then, what is your opinion in this respect? Do you think there have been or there are social projects, experiments that were or are based significantly on the principle of economy for common good? And in connection with that, could you let us know if the dominating model, social organization and production, would allow such social divergencies, heresies, to put down roots on this tiny planet? In other words, do you think, given the current socio-political configuration of the globe, there is a theoretical possibility that for once such projects will not be destroyed, unlike what has happened so far?
アポ先生、ありがとうございます。私たちはもう事前に分かっていたのです。この問題議論にし始めたら2時間3時間あっても足りないと。
We knew that if we start discussing that, the 2 hours, 3 hours is not enough. And if we want to answer your question, maybe we cannot answer in 2 or 3 minutes. Let's discuss this continuously, separately. So let's discuss this discussion. So after this meeting is over. Okay, Minamimori Sensei, please. To be honest with you, I think I will be reprimanded later, but do you believe in the science? I mean, recently, I'm really worried about the science, what is called the science. I'm the kind of skeptical about what is called the science, because the economics is used at the favor sensei said that the economics excluded, that is not the mathematically captured, and also the science is also excluding this all things that is not mathematically explained or comprehended. But recently I can no longer believe in the science. Maybe if I say so, maybe people say that I should stop being a scholar or the researchers. But I understand there is a risk that cannot be captured only by the mathematically possible or mathematically comprehensible. That was a very good thing I learned today. Please.
事例としていただいた企業のなんかフィロソフィー
of a spiritual or ethical value of the corporations. We would like to buy the products of these highly ethical companies at a high price. I think I took a memo of that because it's a very important message for my behavioral change. So when the company does some behavior, what would be the motivation or incentive? That there is an internal and external factors, and there are some external factors, a kind of the governmental policy, and also the societal norm and the external pressure, and also if the other company in the same industry does something else, then they have to follow because of the rivalry. So look at the Japan, South Korea, and China, and the decarbonization, SDGs activities. What kind of the factors can be really work on? I think the social norm is not really statistically significant impact, but awareness of the top management is high, and the CEO's awareness is high. In that sense, it is very statistically significant. So the societal norm, how it can be perceived and how it promotes the decarbonization behavior of the corporations. I really want to research into that aspect.
インセンティブ的にだから税金の優遇とかファイナンシャル的になんかプロフィットにつながらなくて社会的に何か量的な社会的な価値を創出したものが確実的に証拠つけられないのか、そこをこれからどのように証明していくのか、これも重要な課題だと思いました。なぜかというと、すみません、長くなりましたが、うちの研究室の 大学院生が
our
わ
graduate
ざわざ日
school
本でウェイスト
students
ゼロを行っている推進している中小企業の取り組みについて研究したり、もしくは
researching
エシカルな服とかマテリ
SMEs in
アル
Japan
の素材を
and
消費す
also
る若者の認識を研究したり、
there are
こ
some
のよう
studies
に
on
企
the
業の
awareness of the young
こ
people
う新たな
who
取り組みについての研
purchase
究に
certain
興味がある
clothes.
若者が非
So
常に
there are
多いんです
many,
ね。
many young scholars who are
だからこれか
interested in
ら
this kind of aspect or
なんかここ
ethical
で今までなか
behavior
った
of
い
the
ろんな
corporations and the
確実
enterprises.
な課題が
So the
あるのでは
I
ない
think
か
there
な
are
と思いな
many
が
the
ら、
discussion point or research subjects in the academic field.
The last few words.
So please give us the last few words from
Thank you
you.
very much for your last comment, because I can catch up with where I did not finish to make a reference to your reasonings. And I think the incentives are the intermediate level. First, it's about awareness raising and intrinsic motivation. Then it's about incentives. Those who have a smaller carbon footprint, they pay lower taxes. And those who have a zero or a negative carbon footprint, they get even a tax, a negative, they pay even a negative tax. But why not doing the same, what we are already doing with the financial balance sheet? When a company does not meet its financial obligations, then it's closed by the court. And this is not mathematics. Of course, mathematics is just a means to that decision, but the decision is a value judgment. The value judgment could be different. The value judgment could be a company. It doesn't matter how financially sound it is. Financial credit is unlimited. A company goes never bankrupt. We are now doing this with ecology. No? A company goes never bankrupt, no matter how big its ecological footprint, and we would just do the same. All companies have to have at least, let's say, a net zero footprint in the midterm. And those who still have a positive and major carbon footprint in the midterm, they go ethically insolvent. Maybe it's not insolvency, but insufficiency, but they're closed. No? They have 20 years for transition, or at least 10 years. And if they still break these rules, they just are closed as consequently as companies which do not fulfill their financial obligations today. And I think to you, we are not less intelligent than nature. We are not less intelligent than nature, but we have the freedom to be more foolish than nature. Today we are still more foolish than nature, but nature has a law, which is we produce zero waste. In billions of years, nature produces zero waste. It's a law. And we can do the same because we are likewise intelligent, but we are the same intelligence is just an option. And another option is that we can destroy everything. But my point is, maybe we haven't found yet our full potential and wisdom, but we're going there. We will create human rights, and we will create democracy, and we will create peace, and we will create sustainability. It's just a question of time. So let's continue the discussion, and we'll find the solutions.
はい、どうもありがとうございました。私たちの議論どうも続きそうでご
So
ざいます。
now I think our discussion will further continue. So we would like to continue to have the kind of discussion within this group. Thank you very much. With that note, that concludes today's panel discussion. Thank you very much for all the panelists and Yoshikawa Sensei.